the captaincy thing, it's interesting that in rugby it's such a big thing that he wanted it. That like, I haven't heard him talk about that before. You know, I kind of always wanted to be captain, but you can't talk about it. It's like a. Whereas in GAA, I think it's different. This is a story that we're going to talk about now. We've long talked about the notion that the county champions providing the captain for the county team makes very little sense in the modern world, where you have the opportunity to turn the captaincy into something meaningful and totemic and spiritual for a group. And yet, the two most successful counties in the history of the sports, in hurling and in football, are like, this is all bollocks. Let's just get the lads, whoever the county champions, there needs to be some benefit to win. Yeah, you can have a guy, not guarantee him a place in the team, and he might end up shuffling up the steps in September, as it was, going, yeah, this is great, I have a speech ready, didn't get a minute's game time, feel a bit of a fraud, but look. So what do you think?
I've said it before here, and I'm highly against this idea of giving the player the captaincy just because he happens to be the representative from the club that won the county championship. And it's become more pronounced in Kerry over the last couple of seasons because Dr. Crokes' representation in the Kerry team hasn't been as pronounced since Gooch has left the panel. Obviously Johnny Buckley stepped away last year and Fiona Fitzgerald couldn't get into the team. So you had a situation where two guys in their first year, three guys on some occasions, all in their first year, were switching the captaincy between them. So you had Shane Murphy, the goalkeeper, you had Micheál Burns outfield, and Gavin White was the other Crokes player, really, who got a lot of game time. He never had the captaincy, but Micheál Burns and Shane Murphy both picked it up, both in debut seasons. And it makes a complete mockery of the idea of a captaincy, but if you believe that the whole idea of being a captain has no bearing on a game of Gaelic football, then fair enough.
And what bearing does it have? You go up for the toss. After that, there's no extra privilege. The referee doesn't feel like he has to speak to you. You're not doing anything. You're not having conversations. You're not relaying in any information. You've got no role other than your existing role. So what's the point of it?
Well, I can hold up the example of Dublin here. How important has Stephen Cluxton become for Dublin since he's become captain versus before when he was captain? And maybe there is no difference, but maybe having that focal point, that leader on the pitch, is a big thing. We hail the example of Dublin being a team of thinkers, a team of people who can figure out a situation when they're in a bit of trouble. An on-field captain, a person you can look to, is a little bit important in that. I know he's at the back of...
Yeah, come on,
But he is ultimately kick-starting every single attack you have. But can I just read... The reason why this is something we want to talk about this morning is because this was spoken about at the Kerry Convention and it's been met with very, very strong opposition. I'm just going to read some quotes from Owen Cormacan's piece in the Examiner this morning. So, Dr. Crokes, naturally, are one of the clubs against changing the tradition of Kerry captains coming from the county champions. So Matt O'Neill, he received a hefty round of applause when speaking in favour of maintaining the status quo. This is what he said. I've heard several times about Stephen Cluxton with regard to this idea of management selecting a captain and how he is a great mentor. We are not Dublin, nor does Kerry ever want to be Dublin. Let Dublin do what they want to do with their captaincy and let us be Kerry and let us keep our traditions. Once you throw tradition away, it is very hard to get it back. You
need to do that down the lens of the camera as a statement of screw you, Dublin, and your captaincy, and who do you think you are? Go on. A bit of Kerry pride there, come on.
We are not Dublin, nor do we ever want to be a Dublin. It's true. But
half-hearted.
What?
Half-hearted.
Well, because I obviously don't agree with what he's saying, so I'm not going to...
What club's it from, sorry?
Dr. Crokes. Right. So you can see why he's got a vested interest in this. He wants his club mates to get the captaincy quite a bit, and Dr. Crokes happened to win the county championship quite a bit.
And do the clubs decide? That's it. It's like it's not left to the manager to go, this year we're going to give it to the county champions, next year we're going to give it to the player who we believe will benefit the most from it.
Well, I'm not actually sure what would happen if they went against the directive of the county board, which
you get sacked.
Probably would.
They'd come to training and they'd find that everything's locked.
Well, speaking of locked, Fitzmaurice locked the gates to Fitzgerald Stadium and he managed to keep his job for a few years after that. So perhaps if you do go against the traditions, which makes sense, like not allowing randomers in to watch you train or not picking a captain because he's a county champion, maybe those things make sense. Like we've taken the piss out of marginal gains already on the show this morning, but sometimes marginal gains do exist. Sometimes having a captain who feels comfortable being a captain is a good thing. How would you feel if your first appearance for Kerry came as a captain? How awkward would you feel? Paul Burns literally said that it felt awkward.
Like, okay, you have a chat with him beforehand and go, this might feel a bit awkward, don't worry about it, we're only interested in your game. Because you know, and we know, that the leadership has to come from everybody in this team. We expect you to be a leader whether or not you're wearing that armband or not.
Does it really though? Is that really the case? Like, so you can talk about that idea. You can talk about the ideas like, oh, I'm going in. It's only my first year, only my second year, whatever it may be, playing with Dublin or Kerry. I'm going to be a leader. But there are levels to it.
Sure. But by not giving the armband to whoever on that Kerry team is probably the natural leader, does it matter? Is that player suddenly like, oh, I don't have the authority to ball my teammates out of it or to encourage them actively the way I would do anyway? Like, is David Moore the captain, really?
I would say David, there would be a selection between David Moore and Paul Ganey, Peter Crowley. There would be three names that come to the top of my head.
One thing, right? It is possible that if you turn it into something, it becomes coveted and it becomes the type of thing that alpha characters,
which a lot of athletes happen to be,
decide that they want, right? To the detriment of the team ethos. I'm not sure David Beckham was the best captain that England ever had. I'm not sure him being
that's the manager's fault.
I'm not sure that him being made captain and elevated above other players in that team was the right thing for that group. And so, and the England captain is a perfect example of this. It becomes like I am the England captain in football, where again, it's irrelevant. The captaincy is irrelevant. Roy Keane would have been Roy Keane at Manchester United, irrespective of whether or not he had that armband, and indeed he was.
But when it does become relevant is when you say to Roy Keane, sorry, you're not Ireland captain. Arsenal won the Premier League this season. We've got this little kid from Arsenal who's Irish qualified. He's actually the captain. Sorry, Roy.
I mean,
like, how weird would that be for Roy Keane?
Well, I'd like to, it doesn't exist.
But it matters. It matters to the players, doesn't it? Like, it would matter to Roy Keane if he was told, "Oh, Manchester United didn't win the Premier League."
But if you get the captaincy decision wrong, or if you turn it into a competition between players,
that's a good thing. Competition between players is a good thing.
On the same team.
That's it. The very thing that's driven Dublin to be one of the best
squads. You want your midfielder to be competing with your full forward for like the glory. It's like, oh, so let's just put it in the context of Dublin. Fenton's through one-on-one and he looks up and there's Kieran Kilkenny and he's like, screw you, you're the captain, I'm going to take the goal. That's never going to happen.
Well, obviously that's never going to happen.
But you're saying competition between players for the captaincy role is a good thing. It isn't.
Of course it is.
Absolutely, it isn't.
It is, of course.
What if it enters their mind?
Anything is a good thing.
No.
It drives competitiveness between players for
and then when you name one, everybody else is pissed off.
Okay, so say Michael Dara McCauley is looking around and he's like, okay, I'm the second choice midfielder here, Brian Fenton is number one. I need to usurp Brian Fenton as number one midfielder, therefore I'm not passing him the ball ever.
No.
It applies to every little thing. Paul Mannion is like, oh, Conor O'Callaghan's playing well at the moment, he's true on goal. I'm not going to let him jump above me in the pecking order.
No.
It applies to everything, not just the captaincy.
No,
it's a ridiculous notion that the competition doesn't benefit an entire squad in terms of their
competing for places.
Yes.
That's a natural thing to do.
Well,
competing for this nonsensical, idiotic idea.
It's still a competition, and the competition doesn't change.
It's a made-up competition for a prize that has no value.
But your point about them not passing the ball to one another because they're at stake, the captaincy's at stake, positions are at stake. It's a nonsense point to say that would happen. Like, it really is.
I'm saying that there are clearly within teams the possibility to create a division over who gets the captaincy, what the criteria are, what the expectations on the role are, and ultimately it is a nothing role in GAA in particular. So this, I think, is complete bollocks.
Do you not think that there's like divisions there anyway, coming from different clubs? Do you not think there might be a division?
How do you heal those? By making one faction a captain and the other faction saying, sorry lads, you're second-class citizens here.
Or if you look at, say, I don't know, you look at the county finalists here. If there happened to be any bad blood between Dr. Crokes and Dingle, for example, and...
there was the row.
Well, that was in the semi-final. But let's pretend that it happened in the final between Crokes and Dingle. And Crokes win the game and they've got the captaincy. Does that not like fuel the division between them because there's a row?
No, because the captaincy doesn't matter.
But if not...
Because everybody knows
you can take the captaincy away from the situation and give it to somebody else away from those two parties. You can do what you want. You're trying to turn this into... You're utilising the captaincy in a really insidious way.
No, I'm saying that it's open for... You want people to aspire to this nonsensical, irrelevant role.
It's not irrelevant. It doesn't have a huge bearing. I'm not saying it's going to win you in All Ireland, but it might be worth something. It might, like you have to cling to everything when you're chasing a team like Dublin at the moment. And one of the things that makes Dublin great at the moment is this symbolism around Stephen Cluxton. It might be bollocks.
It is.
But
it clearly is.
It's still a thing. You have to try everything at the moment. And I think the idea of having a guy who's playing his first year becoming
irrelevant.
Captain, he's actually been on the record and said it affected him.
So then they didn't manage that situation very well.
What do you mean they didn't? How could they manage it otherwise? He was the only Dr. Crokes player on the pitch.
Don't worry about this.
He had to be captain
it's
because
clearly,
of this
it's clearly irrelevant.
rule.
And were the rest of his teammates not standing up and saying, okay, we're actually the leaders of this situation? And I'm sure they've got a leadership group.
Well, show me leadership group.
Show me the other captains who have been like captain fantastic and heroic, who have used captaincy as the only thing.
Kieran McGeeney. If you took the captaincy away from Kieran McGeeney,
he was suddenly Samson and shorn of his hair.
I'm not saying that, but it
irrelevant. Captaincy was irrelevant for McGeeney.
When you think GA captains, you think of Kieran McGeeney. When you think soccer captains, you think Roy Keane.
Soccer, again, largely irrelevant, but Roy Keane was that same leader of Manchester United before he got the captaincy.
And do you know what? There is truth in that. As I say, I'm not saying that this is the reason
our best
why
player. When Kenny Cunningham was the Ireland captain, Roy Keane was still our best player and transformed how the team played.
I'm not saying that he's the leader he is because he's a captain. I'm saying that the captaincy gives that little bit of an extra edge. It's certainly a better alternative to the current situation, which is throwing out the captaincy like confetti. It cheapens the entire notion of it.
They have to win the club
championship. And maybe it's okay that it's a cheap thing because in your view it doesn't matter. But I think it should be valued with a little bit more
I would just like to see some examples in GA where the player is transformed because of this. And it doesn't happen. That's the point. It is irrelevant.
You see, it's such an intangible thing that you can't just say, well, statistically that team is better because that person was captain. You can't measure this. So I can't give you an example where it's like, I've got the facts here. If you're such an empiricist, then good luck to you, but I believe in a little bit more than that.